to order. So before we get started, we'll stand and have a moment of silence and do the Pledge of Allegiance. So if everybody will. Take a moment of silence. All right, and we'll go with the pledge. Pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you all very much. So, since this is a special called meeting and it's on the opposing, or we're doing a resolution opposing the Education Freedom Scholarship Act or the vouchers, input is limited to that specific topic tonight, so on public input. So we'll get the public input here out of the way. So who's our first person?
David Seal.
All righty.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. David Seal, 730 San Martin Road in Dandridge. And I commend you for making a resolution opposing the falsely titled Education Freedom Scholarship Act herein called a bill. Globalist forces outside this state are openly threatening your legislators with expensive primary elections if they listen to the will of the people. These threats are published in major newspapers, which violate the spirit of our republic. First year cost to taxpayers, $347 million. Reoccurring cost year after year, $191 million. And that's on page 9 of the fiscal note of this bill. There's nothing conservative about spending $1 billion tax dollars every 5 years. That's redistribution of wealth. Proponents of the bill believe that us teachers are stupid enough to fall for that $2,000 bribe. The cost is $172 million to taxpayers. It's anti-conservative and it's insulting. The bill diverts 80% of the sports betting tax from the Lottery for Education Fund to the School Building Improvement Fund to the tune of $77 million per year. And that's on page 8 of the fiscal review note. This money could be appropriated for school building without the voucher bill. Now they think, in terms of the bill sponsors, they think that you're stupid enough to believe that. Notwithstanding Jefferson County taxpayers in several counties with no private schools, they'll be forced to subsidize the private education of students in communities with private schools. That's a blatant, unfair, discriminatory, anti-conservative practice. Worst of all, the bill empowers state bureaucrats just to make rules. It makes 28 references to administrative rulemaking. These are unelected swamp rats that need less power over teachers, not more. That too is anti-conservative. I'm providing a table of authorities to prove what I've told you. And finally, Mr. Chairman, if you will scan a copy of your signed resolution and email it to me, I'll make sure my readers in all 95 counties see the Tennessee Conservative News before their legislators convene in Nashville tomorrow, and this will magnify the effect of your resolution. Thank you very much.
Who's next?
Ken Morton.
Ken Morton, 604 Boxwood Lane, Jefferson City. And I'm just here to encourage you to oppose vouchers. I think they weaken the public school system. The public school system needs all the help we can get. I talked with a new resident of this county last Sunday afternoon. He lives in a brand new subdivision around here. He's been here 2 years and has a little toddler. And he said, I'm trying to get out of here as soon as I can because he doesn't want his tolerant to go to school in Jefferson County once he moved here. And I talked to another person today who has been interviewing some dentists about coming here. As you might expect, one of the first things they ask is about the school system, and none of them came. So I'm all in favor of supporting public schools, and I think the voucher system is going to undermine them. Thank you.
Thank you. Next.
Laura,
My name's Laura Millette, and I live at 847 Stonegate Shores in Danbridge. I'm here to support the resolution that opposes Governor Lee's misnamed Education Freedom Scholarship Act. This universal voucher bill will not improve education opportunities for Tennessee families, and it has nothing to do with freedom, and it will not improve scholarship for most Tennessee students. It will, however, adversely affect our public schools and our community while spending tax money irresponsibly. This year's bill adds a one-time teacher bribe, diverts funds intended for scholarships towards K-12 infrastructure, which should be funded separately, and sweetens the deal with a promise that public schools won't receive less money if students move to private schools, at least for now. That could change at any time. Lee talks about giving families choices, but in the world of private education, it's the schools that get to choose their students and reject them if they want to, sending them back to public schools that are mandated to teach everyone. Here's a couple important points. Only 42% of voucher-eligible schools provide state-level non-discrimination protections against racial discrimination, and only 24% of voucher-eligible schools protect against discrimination on the basis of religion. And let's talk about the families that won't be able to take advantage of the cash giveaway. Families that live in rural areas where the private schools are too far to get to, families without reliable transportation or where parents' work schedules preclude them from providing transportation for their children, and families who cannot afford the unpaid portion of the private school tuition. Our public schools are struggling due to underfunding and neglect by the state that has persisted for years. Census data shows that Tennessee spends 30% less on education than the national average, ranking in the bottom 10 states, below all our neighboring states except Mississippi. This new expense, paid out to those privileged enough to choose private schools, will create a two-tiered education system, destroying public schools, which will continue to serve the needs of most Tennessee children, and costing taxpayers money at the same time. If voucher funds are eventually taken away from the public schools, local governments will have to make up the loss of funding, diverting money from other budget needs, and property taxes will rise, and the community will be left with deficits. If voucher funds do not follow the students to private schools, the state's going to have to find a way to generate those funds required for this new, separate, but equal education path. And yes, I said separate but equal because universal voucher plans will take us back to schools that look like they did before Brown versus Board of Education. Let's stop the voucher expansion and ask the state of Tennessee to invest in our future by fully funding public education. Thank you for presenting the resolution, and I urge every board member who believes in the value of public education to vote yes. I also want to say that a special session is definitely needed for hurricane relief, and it should have been called months ago. They do not need to be tying hurricane relief to unrelated things that are not good for our children. Thank you.
Thank you. Next. All right, so that's all for public input, which then brings us to the new business portion. And before we do, I'm going to read our resolution just in case you haven't heard it. Thank to Dr. Arnold and his staff for coming up and getting this for us real quick. So it says, whereas the Tennessee Constitution, Article 11, Section 12, mandates that the General Assembly shall provide for the maintenance, support, and eligibility standards of a system of free public schools, and whereas school choice already exists via district transfers, charter schools, home schools, virtual schools, and private schools, and whereas Jefferson County Schools educates every eligible student in our community who wishes to enroll, and whereas Jefferson County Schools serves a diverse student body with programs and resources designed to meet individual student needs, including students from economically disadvantaged households, students with disabilities, and English learners, and whereas the proposed Education Freedom Scholarship Act would create a program that diverts public funds private institutions, thus threatening the ability of public schools to provide high-quality education and maintain local control. And whereas, under this proposed legislation, private schools receiving these funds will not be held to the same accountability standards as public schools, and public dollars would be used without assurances of equitable access for all students, including those with disabilities or limited income. And whereas, while the proposed legislation guarantees that LEA's funding will not decrease due to student disenrollment, this static funding fails to account for rising operational costs, and without continued enrollment growth, districts lose the opportunity for future student funding increases that would otherwise offset expense growth, creating a widening disparity over time. And whereas, as a result of static funding amidst rising expenses, districts may be forced to reduce essential programs and opportunities for students, or seek additional funding from local governing bodies, placing an increased financial burden on communities and undermining the quality of public education. And whereas, while investments in teacher pay and the construction and maintenance of public school buildings are critically needed, these initiatives should not serve as enticements tied to voucher legislation that jeopardize the long-term stability and quality of public education, but instead should be evaluated and implemented on their own merits. And now, therefore, be it resolved that the Jefferson County Board of Education expresses its opposition to the Education Freedom Scholarship Act of 2025 and any future efforts to implement or expand voucher or ESA programs in Tennessee. And be it further resolved that the Jefferson County Board of Education urges the Tennessee General Assembly to prioritize investments in public schools, strengthen teacher recruitment and retention efforts, and ensure that all students receive the support they need and thrive. And be it finally resolved that the Jefferson County Board of Education calls on stakeholders, including parents, community members, and policymakers, to support public education as a cornerstone of democracy and an essential foundation for the future of Tennessee. So that is the resolution before us. So is there any motion on the new business for the resolution opposing the Education Freedom Scholarship Act 2025? Mr. Chairman.
I'll move to adopt the resolution.
We have a move to adopt the resolution. Second. I got Mr. Jarnick in a second. Once again, the move is to adopt the resolution 2025-135 opposing the Education Freedom Scholarship Act 2025. Any comment, debate? All right, we'll vote. All those in favor of adopting the resolution 2025-135 opposing the Education Freedom Scholarship Act of 2025, please raise your right hand. And if my public school counting was correct, that's 7-0 opposed. Motion to pass the adopt the resolution passes. So that brings us to the adjournment of the special session. Is there a move to adjourn? Got Mr. Danny Martin over here moving to adjourn. Is there a second? Got Paul over here as a second. All those in favor, raise your right hand. All right, 7-4, 0 against. We are adjourned. Thank y'all very much on that. I'm gonna pass around this copy that's to be signed, so we'll start over here and everybody, whoever's last, make sure we get it to Ron right. I have the unfortunate duty of having to go to Atlanta. So I gotta leave and do a little online thing for school, so I'm gonna turn the work session over to Doug here and he's gonna run it. But thank y'all, appreciate getting that resolution. I know we're doing our best. Hopefully somebody will listen. So thank y'all.
All right, the regularly scheduled work session of the Jefferson County School Board is now in session. Our first item is recognitions. Dr. Arnold?
Thank you. Ms. Watkey is going to start off with the spelling bee which we had a week or two ago. So come on up, Ms. Warren.
Come on up. Our spelling bee winners that are here tonight. I want to tell you about our spelling bee winners. So every year we have a district-wide competition, and to get to the district-wide competition, you have to win at your school. And so our spelling bee is 3rd through 8th grade, and this time I think our future is very bright because we have all elementary winners that beat the middle schoolers. So I'm very impressed with them. There are lots and lots of challenging words, and these boys did a great job studying, and I also saw some of their sponsors here tonight. So I know I saw Miss Foraker. If there are any other sponsors here, I'd like to recognize you. Thank you for running the spelling bees at your school and organizing those events and then getting our students prepared to compete. All of our spelling bee winners at the school level get to go on and compete in the regional competition. And so they can go on and possibly compete and win at that level and go on to nationals. So we're very proud of these young men. And I will say that first place, if you'll raise your hand, please, was from Jefferson Elementary School. This is Liam. And second place from Rush Strong School. That's Connor. And third place from Piedmont Elementary School is Chase.
With a C.
With a C. Chase with a C. Very good. Congratulations, boys. Thank you for a great job. Dr. Arnold, we're going to take your picture. Yeah. Oh, sorry.
Hey, we're gonna take one picture here and then I'm sure we might have some parents. I'm sure, turn around. I'm sure we got some parents here want pictures. There you go. Mr. Dax got some. Thank you.
All right. Thank you.
Ms. Taylor Johnson, principal at White Pine, has a recognition.
All right, so this is Megan Vasquez. She is an 8th grader at White Pine, and she was recognized for an award of excellence with the TSSAA and the NFHS for her sportsmanship. So she was nominated by her coach, Nicole Martin, and she received that award for the state. So we are so proud of her.
One more recognition, real quick, is not going to ask her to come up and give a speech, but just as we recognize Teacher of the Year, we recognize Principal of the Year, and our Principal of the Year for Jefferson County was Miss Julie Allen down at Piedmont. Julie last year for 2 years, went through a renovation process down there at Piedmont. Carried that through wonderfully. She continued high academic standards, handled issues on a daily basis. So we just appreciate that, going above and beyond and extra effort that entailed. So we recognize Julie today with a cake for her staff down there, and went down and had pictures. So we're thankful to have all our administrators, and this year we recognize Julie Allen. So congratulations.
Okay, the next will be Director's Information. I'd like to ask that the board members wait until both the Lewis Group and the Blankenship Partners make their presentations and finish, and then at the end of both of their presentations, any questions that we have, we can pose it to them. So I would ask to refrain from asking questions during their presentation, so that it's easier to keep on your thought track when people aren't interrupting you. I'm sorry. I'll turn it over to Dr. Arnold, and it's your business item.
And if you have anything, we'll have, come on up, Mr. Blankenship. You got anything? Sure. Come on up. Did you have anything for me to, or the board or anything? Good.
Get my assistant up here now. And, as I said, we're here to answer any of your questions that you may have. We'll certainly field anything you'd like to know.
All right, any questions for Mr. Blankenship?
We're waiting till the end.
I know that Mr. Blankenship presented last week and or last month, and you just want to discuss a little bit about those options that were on there before
I'll
and
be glad
removing
to.
those.
I'll be glad to.
Yeah.
Well, when we first submitted a budget, it had a group of options up at the top. And let me see if I can get my hands on it right here. And there were 5 or 6 options to be considered later on. Okay. We've since gone back and reviewed each and every one of them, and carefully and really picked at them and looked into them, and we found duplications there. So we don't need this option anymore, that sort of thing, because it cost us in the big general contract. And one of them definitely was the increased number of classrooms, which many people asked for. We had included that, and it was for $3.4 million. But now, hey, after we looked at these things a lot, we found nobody really interested in additional classrooms. So we just took that off the paper real quick. To renovate the gym stage was overpriced. It was shown at $500,000, and that item is going to be easily less than $100,000. And so that was also covered. It was a duplication. It was also covered in the large general contract cost. It was a hazardous waste contingency of $50,000. We have another contingency, substantial contingency of 5% of the construction costs, and that's $948,000 for unforeseen circumstances later on. So hey, you don't need contingency on top of contingency. So that one was taken off, and that's mostly the sort. But there were 2 or 3 duplications in there. That's it. Oh, well, you can ask them.
Did you get copies of the revised budget?
I did send them copies of revised budget. I don't know if they have them in front of them. I did email them copies. Do you have copies? Or-
I don't know.
I
I
did.
don't think I
They
have
have
that
been
many
emailed copies of the revised budget with the options that were removed out of the,
It shows, the big numbers are, the hard cost total $19,913,000. That's 19.9 million. Soft cost total $3,417,000. for a total, grand total project cost of $23,330,000. Look, I'm looking at the old one. They had the options on it. Go back to what I sent you. Okay. The hard costs are still $19,898,000. The soft costs came down in $2,884,000, which leaves a grand total project cost of $22,783,000. So, I knew that, bro.
2,884.
Something I would like to point out. I think at the last meeting, a few weeks ago, we suggested that the abatement of the hazardous material, the abatement project take place during this coming summer to get those materials out of there once and for all, and as soon as possible, while the kids are not there and while they're away for the summer. Okay. We've been in conversation with two very good authorities, one abatement company and one professional abatement engineer, and different conversations. And both of them came back and told us that could easily happen during the summer weeks. I believe you have about a 9-week summer vacation for the kids. Starts last day something like May 23rd.
Somewhere around there, yes.
And then it lasts about 9 weeks. To give you a little detail, I'm not going to beat this around much, but the toughest material will be floor tile to get out of there. It's throughout the school. The maximum, the contractor said, this is an abatement contractor. He said the maximum that would take would be 5 weeks. He said it comes out easier to move the releases and that sort of thing quickly, maybe 3.5 or 4 weeks. So it can easily happen this summer. There is enough time. That's a big enough window. We have, schedule for them. We have worked out a pretty color schedule. We'll be glad to share it with you. Of course, this is just our thoughts. And we need a lot of good input from the owner. When you would like to see things happen too. But I'll be glad to share it with you. And what you see on this piece of paper is up in the upper left corner is where it starts with a 30-day architect engineer contract, putting the contracts in place for this project. And then after that, mid-March, for about 2.5 months or 75 days, there'll be a schematic design period. At the end of the schematic design and at the end of these other design phases, those blue boxes are pricing periods where a contractor can spend a couple weeks constantly pricing this project to make sure it is on budget. And we haven't run off the road or run up the price or added things to the scope that should be added. So those blue boxes are very, very important in maintaining price and cost control over this project or any project. Starting, I show down below, there's a green abatement period of 60 days from June through July. And up above, the design development phase, and then proceeding after September, proceeding into construction documents. Some things for this project are unique. You can get started earlier, almost as early as you want to go with them. There's some site work, moving parking lots, better site lighting, storm sewers, need total reconstruction. Those things can happen quickly. It'd be nice if you get those site items out of the way before the winter months. And then sometime about December, from there on, is when the major work will start inside in the building. One phase at a time. Do you remember the last time we were here, we showed the phasing plan, how to do this wing of the building and that wing and this area and that area. Hey, they can start in the fall and continue on. We're probably looking at 2 years worth of construction. And what did I do?
The blue boxes he mentioned are for us to just kind of keep an eye on the pricing, but it's also an opportunity for the school board to give us feedback, for you to review drawings where we are at that stage and say, hey, you didn't listen to us, fix this, or great job, you got this exactly the way we want it. So it's an owner review period as well.
Yeah, I think it'd be better if we ask each individual person. You go right ahead.
Sure. Just hold on a minute. I want to read the motion that was made at the September 23rd meeting. Motion was made that the board select Blankenship and Partners to provide a detailed, itemized estimate for the cost and timeline to renovate Jefferson Elementary School per the approved scope of work. And that's this document right here.
Yes.
Is everything on this document in your estimate?
Yes, sir.
Everything?
To the best of my knowledge, it is.
It's on this list? Okay, are you going to be able to upgrade those classrooms from 700 square feet to 800 square feet?
700 square feet to 800 square feet.
It's on this list. There are some classrooms that are 700 square feet.
70, 780, something like that. I know what you're talking about.
Yeah, there's some just shy of 720, 725. There's some 700 square feet
Okay.
classrooms, yes.
Right, let's see. Classroom space of 800 plus square feet. Are you going to be able to do that for those classrooms that are not 800 square feet?
Physically, it could be done.
That's not what I asked. Are you, is it in your,
If, we went over
is it in that estimate, that cost is what I'm asking?
that is not in the estimate. In enlarging the classrooms, like you suggested, is not in the estimate.
Okay, but it's on this
Renovating
list, and
classrooms.
you just said everything on this list was in your estimate.
Well, I should have gotten.
Do I need to go down the
details.
list, and do I need to go down this list and ask you everyone individually if they're in your estimate, or?
To my knowledge, they are. What I was about to say, Dr. Arnold and I, we went over all the various classroom sizes you have there. And I'm sorry, my understanding that they're adequate the size they are.
Well,
And
that's not what this board wanted. What you want and what we want are two different things, because this document right here was a unanimous vote And so you were supposed to do, according to this motion, follow this document and make these changes and include these things in your estimate. So,
I'll go back and see, see if my
You know?
contractor pick that up, but, that's all right.
so, it's not there. Their classroom,
Not
you've not, in
right
your estimate,
classroom.
you've not included, the, increasing the size of some of those classrooms that are less than 800 square feet to 800 square feet.
Hey, everybody on the team had that list. I'll go back and talk to my contractor and see if he included that or included a price for it. I'll be glad to report back to you.
Could you, do you have a copy of this list?
Oh, yes, I do, yes.
Great. If you're gonna report back, then I would request, unless I need to make a motion, is to take every item that's on this list and break it down to how much each one of these items cost. Does that make sense, right? So the first one on here, new mechanical system, boiler, exhaust, heat, HVAC system, gas, rooftops and controls, hot water. Okay, how much is that gonna cost? All of these items on this list, I think this board approved this, and it was, the document, I think, was put together by the director of schools and by our maintenance department, and it was unanimous vote on this. And so this existed before you were awarded or asked to give us an estimate. So, to me personally, maybe the others too, maybe I'm a little bit out of line here, but if you could follow this down through and break it down, how much each one of these items is costing in that,
That's a
your
word
document, in your estimate.
Yes, sir.
And you also had, I don't have it in front of me, you had a number on there of 289 something square feet. Is it on the document? I was not here at the last meeting. Was it?
For the overall cost?
Right. You had the square footage, and then you had the cost per square footage, which was like $289
And that has been reduced to 262.
$262.
Yes, on the revised budget that he emailed.
Okay, so, okay, I'll leave it alone. I put a pretty good load on you there. If you could do that and bring it back to the next meeting, because I think Jeff Elementary School is on the agenda this next meeting, right? By the 6th, if that's too much trouble. To itemize, the cost for each one of these items on this list here as best you can.
Will do.
That give me a better understanding of what's going on. Okay? Thank you.
Anybody else? Mr. Charlie?
The last time you was here, you gave us an estimate for 6 additional classrooms.
Right.
Who asked you to put 6 on there?
The contractor put those on.
Who asked any individual here asked you?
And I asked him, where did it come from, and when he first put it on. And he said, most school systems ask me for kind of a unit cost for classrooms. They were interested in more and more and more. So, okay, we'll show it to them.
Well, who asked you to take that price off for tonight?
Well, we took it off because
Why?
we couldn't find anyone who was interested in additional classrooms. So, hey. It seemed like a useless item on the paper.
Any other questions? Mr. Johnny, you finished? Any other questions? Mr. Harden?
So I've got a list of things that I don't know is actually in your price, if it includes it or not. So I'm just gonna kind of go down some of the things that I think about with a price, and so like I said, I don't know if this is included, or this needs to be something we'd be thinking about after the fact. Things like a playground.
He's asking about the playground, whether or not that would be included. I do believe that it's been a few days since I've looked at the contractor's document where he gave us an estimate. I believe he did include replacing the playground.
And in the price, and I know you've revised it, what about the parking lot? You had something in the parking lot drop-off area with a walkway?
Yes, we do have, revising some of the parking.
And that's part of the price?
That's part of the new document that I forwarded to you.
And that would include walkways like canopies?
Walkways, different sidewalk canopies, moving parking further away from the school itself, and the visitor parking.
What about like as far as in the cafeteria? So yours, I think I saw an option, was it an option for ovens, freezers, things in the kitchen area for new stuff?
I think the intent was to replace all of the equipment in the kitchen, and that's what we asked them to include.
And that's included in it also?
I understand it is.
Yes, I think it's about $600,000 for kitchen, including new cooler and freezer.
So as far as the technology, cabling, electricity, communication, stuff like that, how does that work out with what you're proposing? Is that all inclusive? Is that a certain amount? And then we are responsible as a school district to finish out whatever it is we want. Does that make sense what I'm saying?
Generally speaking, all of the conduit and wasteways are in the large, basic general cost. The 19 million. Okay. Including cable trays running down the corridors, cable starting and going in every classroom or wherever they need to go. I say, yeah. The conduit, wasteways, boxes in the wall, all of that is in the general cost contract. Most owners have their own IT people and call them in when the project's near complete, and they string their own, pull their own cabling and wiring. I'm not talking about powering, no. I'm just talking about communications and data.
The soft costs on the list here does include $75,000 for the, not for the raceways and the conduit,
Okay.
but for the cabling that your people would put in or whoever you contact.
And you were talking about the abatement. Roughly, how much does it cost to do an abatement? If
Yes,
we
how
were to break
much does
that
it
down.
cost to do the abatement?
It's my understanding it will cost approximately $250,000. And I believe that's the figure that's showing in the NATA abatement report that was done 2 or 3 years ago.
No. What about the actual, when it comes to like, say, gym equipment? I noticed that you had like new hoop hoops up, I think, is an option, is one of them. New goals.
Is asking about gymnasium equipment.
That was in the, that was a duplication. It was shown in the options, and we found it also was listed in the large general contract.
So that's part of the price already then?
It was already there in the hard costs. So that covered costs.
So one thing I do worry about is the security around, outside around it. I'm sure it's pretty well fenced now. Is it pretty well fenced the way it is?
I mean, there is fencing around, you know, the entrances are not fenced, gated. I mean, it's a large campus. I mean, you're talking about 25 acres or more, counting the middle school access, so.
But we don't need to replace anything.
Fencing would have to be replaced. I mean, you have, and I think that's part of it.
It is.
Yeah, there is fencing in the, some of that fencing is 40 plus years old. Some of it's falling down.
Thank you, I appreciate it.
Any other questions? I have a few. One of the things that you mentioned, I believe in your last presentation, was the need to expand the administrative area, the office space. And in your last proposal that has been revised, that was a option. Was that a duplication also? Was
Yes,
that,
sir.
That was a duplication?
It was the contractor that was doing our estimate overpriced it, thinking there was far more there than there really was. And we already had sufficient amount of money in the large general contract
Okay.
to cover it. So it's not that big, it's not that costly, and it was already covered in that answer.
So the option to increase the administration area that would call and add a secure entry for $1.5 million is already in your soft costs,
Yes.
or in your hard costs.
And it, he was really thinking it was much larger and more complex than that. And it's not.
Okay.
It's actually.
And the renovate the parking and access drives and canopies, which was an option that in your first estimate was not in your hard cost. That's $900,000. So that is in your hard cost.
That is in the hard cost, and it's not $900,000.
Okay. But whatever it would cost to do that is in your hard cost in the revised estimate.
Yes, sir.
All right. We talked about the increasing number of classrooms, hazardous waste contingency. Is that in your hard cost, or that was a contingency? I think you said that you don't need that contingency because you already have a contingency that would.
That's
cover it.
correct.
So
That's
that
correct.
could be taken off also. Okay.
It's a duplication of contingencies.
Now, there, in our new build estimate that we saw, there is a cost for a owner's representative building manager, which does not appear in yours. If we were to want a owner's representative building manager, do you have any idea what that cost would be?
Yes, I do. I think the best I know of are costing about 4% of the costs of those hard costs. 4% of that $19.8 million.
So
They come cheaper than that, but that's pretty much the top price.
well, that's the figure I use based upon the other estimate we got. So that would be an additional $617,000 for the owner rep that was not included in your revised estimate. So I guess what I'm saying is in your estimate, your site work is pretty much would remain the same. Your existing building renovation cost includes those options that we just discussed. Those are already in there. So those options, if we wanted them, wouldn't have to be added. They're already in that cost. There is a 5% contingency in there for anything that I'm just reading off the estimate here.
Yeah.
For anything that you might find that we didn't expect. So almost, $950,000. The renovated parking is in the hard cost. The increase in the administrative area and to add the secure entry is already in your hard cost. We agreed that, the increased number of classrooms are probably not necessary. Renovating the gym, is that in your hard costs?
It's in our hard cost.
That's in your hard costs, so we don't have to worry about that. High electrical and low voltage in classrooms, is that in your hard costs already? That is one of your options that you have in here.
Concealing.
Yeah,
Those
concealing.
items. No, wait a minute, yes, I was thinking wrong. We have new, power communication lines, things like that, in the new classrooms and everywhere else. Okay. And we're going to try to conceal them as best we can in the large general contract.
Okay.
Without getting into more expensive furring out of all of the walls.
Right.
Which
Right.
costs a lot of money now.
Right.
And I think there's better ways, or simpler ways to do it, and get rid of cemented wires and all on the walls. So that's gonna be in the general contract,
Okay, so that's an option that we don't have to worry about.
and we're pretty optimistic we can do that.
Okay. So what we're saying is, with your site work staying the same, with the hard costs that you quoted in here, that includes a lot of options that the first one did not include because they were duplicated, the contingency brings us to a total hard cost price of $19,913,250,000. If you add the soft costs into that, that's an additional $3,417,695. And if we take 4% of the hard cost price for the owner's representative, that in my calculations comes to $617,000. So adding the hard costs, soft costs, and the owner's rep costs, we come to a bottom line figure, grand total project cost of $23,400.
Million?
What's that?
23 million?
What did I say, 23,000, I'm sorry, 23. I'm not used to talking in millions. $23,400,000, is that correct?
I think some of the numbers you were reading were from the old,
Oh, maybe it was, okay.
because you listed, or you read soft costs of 3 million, and we're at 2.8.
2.8, yes, okay,
So-
yeah, well, okay, on the sheet I added hard of 19,898,000, soft of 2,884,900, for a subtotal of 22,783,000, plus the owner's rep cost of $617,000 to bring us to a grand total project cost of $23,400,000.
Yeah, I didn't know initially, did we know that we were to have an owner's rep? included in the?
Well, I'm just,
I didn't.
I'm just comparing the renovation cost
Oh,
to the
okay.
new cost, and because it was in there.
I see.
So with that, it would be about 23 million for if we elected to have that.
I see.
Now, if in fact we did this, is that, if we contracted for 23,400,000, whatever, 23,400,000 and change, is that a guaranteed price? In other words, is there, other than the contingency that would kick in if you found things that were unexpected, is there any kind of cost price? The reason I'm asking is I was a commercial lender. I lent on commercial office buildings, things of that nature. I've never looked at a loan application for a school. And this was at a different state at a different time, way back. And I know there's something called cost plus, where you cost something out and then you add things on as it goes along, which drives a lender crazy. Is this a pretty much a guaranteed price once we decide and agree on a price? Can we be certain in writing that that price that you give us in the beginning is going to be the absolute most that we will pay during this project?
That's certainly the way we're headed. That's certainly what we recommend.
Okay.
Hey, the contractor standing here also, and him saying the same thing, and agreeing that is, hey, the guaranteed maximum, top figure.
Okay.
Design has not taken place yet. Nobody knows how many square feet of glass, or how many linear feet of boards, or masonry, or how much a new roof's gonna cost, things like that, until it's designed. Once it is designed, well, let me say it a different way. When we design it, it needs to fit in this budget.
Okay.
And the contractor is going to sign a contract for a stipulated sum, which means that's it. That's what you call a guaranteed maximum.
Yes, yes.
And he's got to stick to that. He's got to run very detailed hard costs, get hard costs from all of his subcontractors, and all of those various prices have to fit within this number that you're talking about.
Okay, so if we decide to go with your option and we say, okay, this is what it's gonna cost, this is what we have, once we sign that agreement, we're not gonna have to go back to the well during this project for more money.
Just tell us, don't come back here asking for more money.
Okay.
Just tell us. And that's the way it is.
Unless we add something from our end, obviously.
You're the owner, you can do that.
Okay. In the way you do things, do you guarantee a completion date? Do you commit to having this done in so many months on a certain,
Yes.
by a certain date?
Yes.
And if you don't perform, what happens? If, in fact, it's only 5, 6 done, and it's gonna take another 3 or 4 months to complete it, what happens?
Are you asking about design or about construction?
Construction,
Okay.
finishing of the project.
The owner-contractor agreement always has a completion date written into it, at least all the ones I've done in my life. Hey, it could be a small job, it could be a large job, it don't matter. It's got a completion date. And the general contractor has to work very, very hard and efficiently and be finished that particular date. If he has fallen way behind and the work is not completed, then that's why we put liquidated damages into his contract. yes, I've enforced those a few times in my practice. And it's so much per day, like $1,000 per day or whatever.
So much per day.
And, hey, they really move their tails when you have liquidated damages.
So there are
There.
there are penalties if things are not done on time.
But, yes, but you can't wait till right at the end of the project and then, oh my goodness, he's behind schedule. You need to monitor the contractor and the work as it is done in the field. For instance, we have progress meetings every 2 weeks on site with the contractor, with the owner, and the contractor is required to produce project schedule. And we review that every 2 weeks or every month. And you can see if he is really staying up on the schedule or ahead of schedule. And don't wait till the very end.
And my last question is, when this is going on, you and Dr. Arnold have talked and are pretty assured that while this is being done, the kids do not have to be moved off-site. Is that correct? You can do this in stages and you know, the kids would still, you know, be able to go to school, you know, as normal, with maybe a little bit more noise than normal. But we would not have to move them off-site to somewhere else. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. That's all my questions. Thank you.
I've got another question.
Go right
The
ahead.
things on schedule.
Sure, in a second. I'll ask the director a question. First, how old is that building? Is it older than me?
Going on 67 years,
67,
66, going on
Okay.
67.
so it's younger than me. It's bad.
It's in better shape.
Now then, my question to you, this remodeling, what you said, I can hear how this, you know that. Nobody's gonna test that. All right, so we remodel the building, how much more life can we get out of that building with this renovation?
There's not one quick answer I could give you to that. I'll explain. One of the things on that list that you were holding up is a re-roof. A new roof to be put on. And you can probably get, 25 years put out of a new roof that's put on.
Right.
Okay. There's 25 more years. What about the new glass windows? Well, they're more than 25 years old. That's probably another 50 years for the windows. You've
We're in the
got,
building right now.
sir,
You're talking about the glass in the building right now.
I'm talking about removing those.
Yeah, I know,
You're
but they've been there for 66 years,
And
which
put-
is way beyond,
And putting in new.
they should have been replaced.
Right.
long
Putting
time
in new windows, 50 years or more. Out of glass, aluminum, not a corroding material, not a corroding metal. You've got masonry there, a lot of masonry that will go a lot more time. Probably another 50 years, or who knows? So, which one you want to pick and talk about the longevity?
Well, let's start with the foundation. Are you doing anything to the foundation?
We're not.
Okay, what about the crack in the gym? Did the gym have a crack in it?
It has been filled at one time. Mr. Blankenship spoke about that would need an additional study on that.
With the last meeting, we said we would just like to study that corner of the gym one more time, a little bit more detail, make sure it's okay.
Okay, so,
I think it's a professional meeting.
so you think the foundation will last another 66 years on that building?
It's indefinite.
Huh?
It's indefinite. It's
Have you
concrete.
looked at it, or anything?
I've had foundations that were 100 years old and better than any new foundation.
Well, I understand that, yeah, but I'm talking about Jeff Elementary School. I don't care about any other buildings. I'm talking about Jefferson Elementary School foundation. Sure.
Our structural engineer did a very thorough assessment of the things that he could observe. Nobody dug a hole. Nobody.
He just walked around the outside of the building and looked at the
He
foundation.
looked at everything that he could see. He looked at the drawings that we sent him. He went up in the ceiling where it was accessible, looked at the roof structure, got up on the roof and looked around. But no, we didn't take anything apart.
So what could he see is what I'm asking now then, you said. So,
Well,
he
he
did just
did.
walk around the building, look at the
He
perimeter?
did see all of the cracks,
Huh?
all of the cracks
Okay.
in the masonry wall.
So he never did any core samples
No.
or nothing like that? Okay.
Vast majority of those cracks are expansion and contraction cracks. They don't have one thing to do with the foundation. They have a lot to do with not
Well, I know
having
that.
any
but
relief.
I'm
from it.
asking about the foundation, because I'm concerned about it because of the age of the building. And, you don't get a good view of it because it's vertical, you know, I understand that. I'm just, you know, starting at the bottom. You started at the top of the roof, I went to the bottom, see. I know a roof will last 25 years is a good number for her. That's about it on the roof, I know. But, there's some unknowns, and I know it's difficult to see that foundation, but there's nothing in the, to do anything to the foundation itself.
Not just-
I know houses expand and, you know, and my house does, depending on the amount of rain and drought and so on. So this building's been expanding and contracting for 6 years. Those expansion joints are, you know, had a lot of work out.
I've seen worse.
Okay? Thank you.
There's no soft joints cut in those, masonry walls every, 25 to 30 feet. That's what we do in standard practice today, that they did not do way back when. So it's all tied together, brick by brick by brick. You know how brick interlock
Yeah.
for the whole gymnasium went. And it needs some soft joints in there that will
Understand.
contract.
Okay, here, I'll read to you the paragraph that the structural engineer included in the report. He says, this is out of the section on his recommendations, he has exterior walls and brick and a number of bullet points. One of those has previously repaired cracking and settlement at the northwest corner of the gymnasium, : the repairs in this area appear to be performing adequately to date. However, based on our review of the existing drawings, there does not appear to be specification of vertical reinforcement in these walls, and given the wall heights, opening sizes, and previous cracking that fully penetrates the wall system, we recommend non-destructive testing be performed to determine what reinforcement is present, followed by analysis to determine if the walls are adequate to meet current code wind load requirements. So he's aware, he's looked at the drawings, he's, he understands that this crack goes through the wall and it's been repaired. So he's, it's not a mystery to him. He just, like I said, we weren't able to take things apart and see what's inside.
Well, you're in a building 66-year-old, it's in perfect condition, and it is. So you've seen over, that's fine.
Any other
Unfortunately,
questions?
as we age, our bones do deteriorate, but buildings, their bones tend to be pretty permanent.
Mr. Wright? Speaking of the foundation, just through my knowledge of foundations, I would imagine that's a lot of concrete, and over time, it's not like brick failing from the weather, but you actually have a curing of the concrete, which would probably make that even better today than it was probably 30 years ago. I imagine what they're seeing is whatever is settled in that building is probably settled after 60, almost 70 years.
It's not
And-
destroyed.
And I think that we need to make sure we take that into consideration instead of drilling doing core samples. Am I incorrect on saying that about the concrete though? That it actually cures? It cures after a long period of time, it actually becomes stronger and harder in the right conditions?
It can. Concrete loves cool and damp conditions. It's like fine wine, it just gets better and better. You know, all of these exterior walls have square footings under them. Well, that's down in the ground. And close to a constant temperature year round, especially on the bottom of the footing. Well, if you take the top of that wall, it could be 120 degrees. So, concrete down below ground's got it easy, got it made in shade. It's got a constant cool condition. But the wall is really suffering up at the top. So there's quite a difference when it comes to expansion, contraction, and then you throw in weather conditions.
Any other questions?
One thing, just as far as project timeline, and I'll put Joey on the spot some since Jesse's not here, but I'll try to answer most of it. Within a project, we need to have that project fully funded before we start a phase of the project. So for instance, within, looking at abatement this summer, that's probably not going to be possible to get that project complete through schematic design, construction, design development, bid out, people hired, and then be able to fully fund that project. Whereas some agencies outside of state level would be able to phase in projects in phases and funding, but we have to have that. Joey, they're not going to issue me a PO for a partial project, so we have to have that fully. If it's a $23 million project, we have to have that $23 million secured, bid out the project in totality before we begin a phase. That sound about right?
Like your plan for Piedmont.
Right. Piedmont was a very, that crossed the line a little bit in that we had that money figured out and how it's going to be funded through various 141, 142, and how that phased in. So we would just need this timeline and project would need to match up with construction. It would need to go all the way through, be bid out, be funded before we could start the project.
So it has to be fully funded or available or funded before we can sign a contract?
So, yes, because we are not a funding body. We could very easily fund a portion of this project, start it, and county commission could remove funding from us. So that's why funds have to be secured, 100% funded in order to move the project forward. Yes, sir.
That raises a question. So if we had funds and we had a commitment or funds from county commission merged, and we had those funds, at that point we could move forward if we so choose.
Once it is, yes, once schematic design occurs, design development occurs, construction documents are produced, it is bid out, that bid matches up with the amount of money that we have available. You know, if we have $24 million available and it comes in at $23,500,000, they issue a PO and it moves forward.
Right.
If we have $24 million available and that bid comes in at $24,001,001, they will not issue a PO.
Understood. Okay.
I'll throw $1 in.
I know.
Any other questions? Thank you, Mr. Blankenship. Appreciate it.
Next, we have Lewis Group.
Good evening. I'm Todd Lorraine with the Lewis Group Architects, and with me tonight is Paul McCall. He's our Director of Architecture and Principal as well with Lewis Group. Thought we would just go over real quick. I know we were here, I believe it was back in September maybe, and provided a cost estimate updated. So we will just look through that real quick together, answer any questions that you may have. It really hasn't changed all that much. A couple of things. What's that next one? A couple of things to point out. First of all, what we were asked to do, I was looking the last couple of days, back in January, or no, it was sometime in 2020, later 2020. We were asked to look at an elementary school design for a 600 student capacity. So that's what we're talking about here today. We went through an extensive programming process with, at the time, Dr. Johnston, Dr. Arnold, and then I know that through some other administration and staff at the school as well, to develop a program for this school. The total square footage of the new school is 77,090 square feet. And so when asked to look at a costing exercise for this, or just update the numbers, what we did is that we used a per square foot cost based on some recent construction. Back in about 5 months ago, we bid a project, Union County Middle School, Forest Maynard. That project was 1,000 student floor capacity, 800 students to start at opening, and that project base bid came in around $283 a square foot. So taking one of the most recent schools that has bid in the area and taking that per square foot cost, we took that data back in September and then we added a little bit of inflation to it for this year, and used a number of $292 a square foot, which you'll see at the start of where the information becomes a little bit more itemized. We also have a demolition number in there for $100,000. If you remember, the site for the new school was at the current county fairgrounds. There's buildings on that site, and the demolition was for some of those buildings. If I remember right, Dr. Arnold, you may remember, I think they were the possibility of maybe keeping a couple of those buildings out there and disassembling them at that time. This has been 3-4 years ago, so hard to remember, exactly what those conversations were. One item I will say before I go any farther, is that during that time, we had an owner's representative as well that was hired and on board at the time, Skanska. And so they had looked at these, they had originally looked at this number back then in 2020, 2021. And so at that point in time, they had a demolition number of about $85,000. And so we added inflation to that number to bring it up to late 2024 and early 2025. And that's why we're sitting at around $100,000 for demolition right now. Construction contingency of 5%, leaving us with a total building, including site costs, of $23,740,794. We have soft costs as well, basically we'll say $3.5 million, leaving a total project cost of $27,280,794. Just real quick, wanted to go through kind of, I have an asterisk, as you'll see there, with soft costs. And that will include architectural and engineering fees, civil engineering fee, FF&E, which is furniture, fixtures, and equipment. So basically, if you take the building, this was always explained to me, if you take the building, you turn it upside down, shake it, everything falls out your FF&E. So there's FF&E design fee of $45,000. Technology, which we'll sort of probably come back to that one. There was an estimate in there originally, and so it's been escalated just a little bit to $500,000. As you turn the page, there's an owner's representative fee there, which was slightly, or a little bit lower than that, again, back in '21, so it's been escalated up to $620. Survey, somewhere in the neighborhood of $35,000 is probably a good budget number for that. Environmental hazmat assessment, which has actually been completed. There's been a phase 1 environmental assessment that has actually already been completed for that site. So that $5,000 could actually be credit the bottom line if we need to there. So hazmat monitoring, because I think it was identified that there were maybe some asbestos in one of those buildings a little bit, and so there's hazmat monitoring to take care of that. Construction materials testing and special inspections, which is something that is done by a third party during the construction process. $130,000 building permit fees, state fire marshal fees, building permit fee somewhere around $45,000. State fire marshal fee of $50,000. You plug that into a calculator, it spits out a number for you. And based on the building construction cost, it was slightly lower than that when we plugged it in today. So it's like $45,000. So there's maybe $5,000 there, a little bit over the top. But utility connection fees and reimbursable expenses, leaving a total soft cost of $3.5 million basically there. So that's how you get to your total project cost. I'll be honest, we have a little bit of an easier job to look at when you're talking about new construction over renovation. So, but we'll be happy to answer any questions that you have concerning this. I also have a copy of the floor plan on a jump drive, if that's something you all want to look at, or we can send it to you later and you can look at it, tomorrow or whatever. We can send it to you electronically if you guys would like to look at that as well. But with that, I'll take some questions.
Any questions? Go ahead. Go right ahead.
First item, what was the square footage of the remodeling? I don't have the document. I missed the last meeting.
It was roughly 69,000 square feet is the current. 69.
What is it?
69,
69.
Two.
plus 15.
So, and that was at $262, I believe it said, per square
The
foot.
remodeling was, yes. 262 was the remodeling.
262 for remodeling, yes. So, the difference between, the two numbers cost-wise is $3,880,000, $800,080. Yeah. And you get 77,000 square feet, which is about 8,000 more square feet. I'm trying to compare remodeling to understand where I'm going, right? Square footage to new square footage and the cost difference between the two. And, you know, obviously we're getting more square footage with the new construction. Another question, what will be the lifespan of this new building? Ask them the same question, I want to be fair, right?
Go ahead. Well, I mean, typically, you know, you're looking at a new construction masonry 50-year building, but, you know, and even your current building is far exceeded that, right? Even without probably, you know, reinforce, I mean, you know, we always, you know, this isn't the first system we talk about these issues with, right? I mean, there's a lot of aging stock of buildings throughout the state, throughout the country. You know, I mean, 2006, there were new seismic codes, you know, the reinforcing, you know, filled cells and masonry. I mean, that stuff, you know, is significantly more robust than it was, you know, back in the day. So, yeah, I mean, that lifespan would be, sorry, long-winded kind of answer, but it's, you know, 50 years plus, 75
Just a hard
years.
question to
Yeah,
answer, I know.
yeah.
I wouldn't try to put anybody on the spot. Let's go, building codes, I don't know much about, but Jefferson Elementary School, 66 years old, talking about the foundation. I know there's rebar in that foundation, but would today's standards be better, require more rebar than, say, back in, whatever, 1958, I guess? And I believe you, concrete is somewhat porous, and so rebar will rust over time, correct? I mean, if you go over and damage, they're tearing those two bridges out, and basically that's the reason, is because of rebar in the concrete bridges. So you take a building that's 66 years old, the foundation is not going to be quite up to today's building code, I guess is what I'm asking.
Yeah, I mean, so Mr. Blankenship, and he's correct about, you know, concrete does, or maybe you were the one that brought it up, concrete cures over time, it continues to harden. So, you know, that, it does do that, you know, with a lot of older structures, I mean, concrete doesn't work without the reinforcing steel, you know, in it. You know, the concrete's great for compression, the steel works in tension. So as a system, it works great together. As long as you've got adequate cover on that rebar, it, you know, it can last a long time.
Right.
You know, but you're referencing bridges and things like that, when it gets exposed, there's degradation, carbonation of steel happens, you know, and it basically just flakes out. So that can happen. So, but I have no knowledge of what the cover, you know, on this, and again, like what was stated earlier, nobody's really been able to see, you know, because a lot of that material is buried right underground. So.
Good answer.
Mr. Martin?
I've just got one question which we haven't discussed is remodeling. We're going to use the old facility, you know, make it new, make it better, whatever. Compared to building a new school, if we build a new school, then we're still going to have a price of something of what we're going to do with this old school. If it's not good enough to remodel, is it good enough to sell to somebody or use for somebody? What do we do with that? You've got to pay to have a demo, which is going to be how many $1 million? That's just a question I'm throwing out here.
So it's a good question, and it does have a cost, yes.
I mean, it's going to have a big cost because you've got asbestos that you gotta handle a certain way.
Right.
You know, I'm just kind of thinking, new school, we got a new school, but we still have an old school that we gotta do something with. Old school remodel, they go in and take the asbestos out, or they do whatever they're gonna do with it, I don't know. Just something I'm thinking about on that.
Any other questions?
I can share. Just-
Oh, I'm sorry.
Do you mind if I
No,
just share?
no,
quick?
I didn't know it was a question.
I can
You
share.
go ahead and.
It really wasn't a question, but I can share.
No,
just
you go
something
right ahead.
Because we had a recent building that just, Oliver Springs High School in Oliver Springs. They just renovated, or I'm sorry, they just demoed their existing building that they had. They got bids anywhere from about $300,000 to $1 million to demo that. Now, obviously, they took the lowest bid at $300,000, and they had a lot of asbestos
So
in
they
there as well.
They can demo that old school for
Oh, I'm not saying this one. I'm
Yeah,
just
I know,
letting you
that's
know,
what-
this is what.
that's what I'm saying.
I mean, but it was in terrible shape.
'Cause it
I will
cost
say
us-
that. It had a lot of asbestos and a lot of coal. It had old coal in there where they used to heat it from years ago. I'm not sure, but it may even be older for Jefferson
We-
Elementary.
We paid $65,000 to demo the old store building down at restaurant, didn't we?
I believe it was somewhere in that neighborhood, so that included demo and then some fill, and putting back, so there was a lot to that.
Just something I'm thinking about.
Yeah, and back when it was very first discussed, I don't think the Board of Education did it again, but they were gonna do it at that
Right.
time.
Well, I mean, to me, if it's not good enough to put kids in, I don't feel like it'd be good enough to sell somebody to put an old folks home in, you know, that's.
The board's had a lot of property that, old New Market School is now New Market City Hall. Swansylvania, that's Swansylvania over there, is some community stuff, and, whenever we had the flood, it was Emergency Management Center. We also have, Old Dandridge Elementary up on the hill behind the post office is unbelievably got renovated and is becoming, some type of, senior
Grammar
living.
School.
Yeah.
Dandridge Grammar
Oh,
School.
yeah, up on the hill, yeah, and,
Right above the post office.
there is, I mean, central office is in a building built in 1868 or somewhere around there, some of that building, so I know that the county is talking about space and different things there that they're looking for. The mayor's office, finance, they're all running out of space. We're spread, central office is spread all across the district anyways.
Any other questions? Mr. Hurd?
Well, I'm gonna go ahead and ask you guys the same thing that I'd asked Blankenship. I'm gonna ask you this with the understanding that the price that we have is strictly for the building, correct? There's nothing outside that building that is included in this. I'm kind of asking, because I have a drawing, but that's all that this deals with, is just the building itself, your numbers.
No.
So, okay.
So this is a total project.
Okay, so yours includes playground?
It does not, because normally when we work for public school systems across East Tennessee, the PTA normally funds the playground.
Okay.
But it can be included, it's just something that you have to.
But it's not, it's not.
Correct, that's
okay,
correct.
okay. Not that it couldn't be an option down the line.
Sure.
Okay. Does it include a parking lot? As well as drop-off area or inclusive and all that?
That's correct, and even the access drive, the improvements to the access drive that connects back, because it's on the back side of the site, the connection back to the main
So
highway.
we'll come to the main highway, does that go to the, like Universal, Universal Road?
To the highway.
To the highway.
To the highway, yeah. So it would split somewhere between the alternative school and the middle school.
Okay. It also include, obviously, walkway canopies, stuff like that? Fencing going around the property?
We have fencing on the back side of the property where the industrial building is that's on the very back side of it. And if I remember correct, it's fencing on the front side of the property. Because where it was located originally, there's a detention pond in an area, and I think there was fencing around the detention pond as well.
Okay, so I'll give you like half the credit for that.
Okay.
Now, as far as like cafeteria, the ovens, freezers, walk-in coolers, all that's inclusive?
All included, yeah.
What about like, lunch tables, that kind of
That's
stuff?
it, that's it.
No, that's all included in the song. Technology, I noticed in yours, you had a lot of exclusions. Explain to me what is included, what isn't included.
Sure.
If you don't mind.
So you can help me too with this, Paul, but, I mean, we have some exclusions in there, but then you go back and looking at under technology, there's $500,000 that we're carrying in the price, right? And so, the reason that some of those things are exclusions, take security, for instance. The school system has a security consultant that they like to use throughout their entire system, so that everything's probably keyed the same, the card readers are the same, everything else. So, you know, if you bid that project though, and I'm not sure what we'll do here. I mean, we have a fee in here for an owner's representative, but if you bid that project, then you're subject to, you can't single out that vendor. You're subject to whoever the lowest bid is for the security. So a lot of times the school systems like to pull that out, and then they pay it out of their line, there's a line item in their budget that they pay for that, so that they can get the vendor that they want.
Right.
For the building. So we're carrying some amount in here of $500,000 for technology, but that number can be maybe shifted a little bit just based on what the school system ultimately.
Which one they decide to do.
Correct.
And that's why it's listed in soft costs, you know, as opposed to being part of the bricks and mortar, because, you know, it can be.
Okay. Okay, so I did notice two of yours that had deep end or special foundation. I imagine that's just because you're going into some new ground.
Yeah.
You don't know what you're getting into.
Well, right, I mean, that's, in a way, that's a little bit of a weird exclusion, but, I mean, it's kind of an obvious exclusion because it's a two-story building, or this one a one-story building. But even up to a two-story building, you know, there would never be an expectation where you would have micropiles or any kind of deep foundation, just because the bearing capacity wouldn't require it. So, yeah.
And so all the site work would basically be covered, pretty much cover underneath it. There wouldn't be any kind of a contingency or anything like that that we would need to account for.
You know, there's always, I know there has been some geotech done on this. You know, rock is always an issue, you know, doing unit prices for rock that's found. I mean, you know, you mentioned the Horace Maynard project up in Union County. I mean, there's a lot of rock on that site. And, I mean, we have a very healthy contingency, and it's taken a real hit just because there's a lot of rock, you know.
Back in 2020, we had a site plan for the site and where we would approximately site the building at. So we have done geotechnical investigation there. There was 9 borings that was done during that time, and the report came back favorable. Now, where they do that boring, they could go 10 feet over and hit rock, right? So, I mean, it's happened before. But, you know, based on the investigation that was done at that time, it said that, and also the structural engineer agrees that soils are suitable for shallow foundations as well, so, which addresses that.
Yeah, just, and not to get too far in the weeds, just a couple of bullet points from the geotech that catch my eye. You know, soils will need to be dried during the grading process, so, you know, kind of similar to a project we had in West Knoxville not too long ago, where we just need to make sure that, you know, time of year, we all know, is so important in terms of when we grade, moving earth, because, you know, if you're doing that in the winter and you're trying to turn soils over and dry them out, this particular contractor used a lime treatment that they ended up sort of eating at a pretty good cost just because it was the middle of winter and very difficult to get the soils dry. So I think, you know, we go into this process, you know, the sooner and having a good, you know, starting that project as soon as possible, right, to meet an end date schedule is super important. They also did note, kind of along with that some undercut would be required to replace with suitable material, but it doesn't really quantify that, you know, at this point.
What do you mean by that right there? Say that again?
Some undercut, some just finding that there were some unsuitable soils. I mean, it doesn't sound like there's a lot of it, but some unsuitable soils that would have to be undercut and replaced with engineered fill. So.
Any other questions? Go ahead.
And roughly, how long would this project to do it new from start to finish? What are we looking at time-wise?
So right now, and even, you know, that brings up another point, I guess. We completed schematic design on this project. And so you can probably take this, you can take the architectural fee and reduce the amount that we've already spent with you, because that would be credited towards us. I just put it together as an overall project, is basically what I did. So you could take a little bit of money out of the architectural fee for what we spent to this point in time, and I think, Tom, you had the amount or something maybe, so, so we would be starting right now in DDs, is what that's called, and so we design development. So we're already ahead from the standpoint of having a schematic design that's approved by this board, or maybe not this board.
The board.
Approved it. Yeah, the board, I guess is what I should say.
A board.
A board, yeah, right, because I think it's changed twice since then, but yeah, and so it's been approved, and, so we're looking at about 4 to 5 months to finish construction documents. And then we would go to bid and look at starting construction somewhere around September, late August, September of this year. And we're thinking a 20 to 22 month construction schedule, which should put you in the beginning of the school year 27, 28, I guess is what that would be. So.
Thank you. Any other questions?
I got a question. On these exclusions, what would be roughly a ballpark cost on each of these, should we get these done?
Well, so if you take, this is where the exclusions get a little bit confusing. So take 2, 3, 4, and 5, again, those are lumped in. If you look under the soft cost for technology, IT equipment, cabling, phone security, that number that's included there in the soft costs. So I would say 2 through 5, it's already represented in this overall cost, but as a soft cost. It's just not part of the bricks and mortar cost, because again, that's work that the school's forces, people or vendors that the school uses would be doing. You get into little things like, residential, number 6, residential appliances such as refrigerators, that's just stuff that, it's just trying to make a point that that's not included in the base bid of the project. That's stuff that typically teachers or, people, in the faculty bring in. Walk-off mats, that's a pretty minor item, just, at the front doors. So, and then number 8, waste handling equipment, that's your dumpsters and waste, that's going to be like dumpsters, it's going to be whoever you contract with, for waste management and things like that. The only other one I didn't talk about initially was number 1, again, deep and/or special foundations. The expectation is that's not even an issue. It's almost more confusing to put it in there, but it's basically just saying the expectation with a 1 or 2 story building is that this is just typical concrete spread footings. So you're not talking about micro piles or caissons or anything like that.
So the answer is really we're carrying it in there, in that, but the majority of it in that $500,000 represent. A walk-off mat can be $200-300, something like that, right? Depending on how many you put throughout your school. And then the waste handling equipment, I don't know if they charge you for a dump. I'm sure they charge you rent for a dumpster, but you don't buy your dumpster. Right?
No, we pay a fee to the county and the county provides.
Right.
So it's pretty minimal.
And I'm sorry if you mentioned this already, but if we needed to demolition the old building and abate it, what would something like that cost?
No idea, because that wasn't part of the original project. It had never been decided whether or not, what they were gonna do with it. Keep it, sell it, demo it. It just kind of like where we are probably today, right? The example that I gave was of the school that we had a little bit of minor involvement in, but a civil engineer handled the bid documents for the demolition of a building. I'd like to go back and look, maybe about the same size building, maybe maybe a little bit smaller building. Old building, probably the same age or older. And I think they had 9 contractors that bid it, and it was a bid, so they ended up going with the low bid, which was around $300,000 to demo and seal it. But they had some bids that were as much as $1 million too. So, but they were kind of all over the place. But I talked with that school system actually just the other day, asked them how it was going, and said it was going great. So they're very, very pleased. They had a lot of asbestos in it as well, and so they're abating that as they demo it. So I would say probably the best thing to do is maybe call local to East Tennessee demo contractor to give an estimate if you're looking for that. You can probably get a couple of them to give you an estimate with a phone call. Yeah.
Questions? I have some comment. As I said, being a past commercial banker, I probably look at things in a little bit different way than a lot of people, because I'm usually on the beginning, you know, and putting my institution's money at risk for something that somebody brings in. So I like to look at cost per square foot. You know, I try to compare apples as much as I can. And so when I saw your square footage price, $292 per square foot, my antennas kind of went up. So I went online and called some folks and found some similar, you know, you never find a project that's completely the same, but similar projects. One is just up the road, Lincoln Heights Elementary, that's being built in Morristown. About the same size school, a little bit bigger, new school. Their square foot price was $3.17 per square foot.
317.
$317. Excuse me. Then there's one in Anderson County, in Clinton, Claxton Middle School, that is not finished yet. By the way, the one in Morristown, I would say within 4 or 5 months of being finished, so they're just doing some details, finishing on it. The one in Anderson County in Clinton is $328 per square foot. Based upon that, I don't know how you came in with $292 per square foot. It seems like that's an awful inexpensive price for what we're looking for, and I was just wondering how you came to that price.
As I talked about earlier, it came from the price that we had just bid a school about 5 or 6 months ago as well.
Mm-hmm.
And it was $283 a square foot. Union County Middle School. That was the base bid. That was building construction and site cost as well. There were some alternates. They accepted some of the alternates, but you know, in the base, we used the base bid of it, and because it's very similar to this. Also, it's very hard. I'll say this: it's very hard to compare apples to apples because programming changes from school to school.
Oh yeah.
And so, you know, you're going to have extra programs and maybe extra items, maybe wider hallways, different things that may affect the design of the building. This building is a very efficient building, a very efficient design.
And I'm sorry,
Yeah, go right ahead.
I don't mind saying that we were very pleasantly surprised at the cost, at the bid of that project. And in fact, we only had 3 bidders on the project, and they were all very, very reasonable. I mean, the 283 was the low, but, I think they were, the highest one might have been right around 300. So, yeah, but, you know, I don't mind saying that. We were elated, actually, because we were very concerned about that budget. And you know, things, we all know it's a period of inflation. Things are really high, but they're also just sort of all over the place, you know. I mean, I think I've said this in front of this board before, so you might stop me, but, you know, I've said it in front of a lot of people, is that I think there were a lot of subcontractor costs, you know, especially electrical and mechanical and plumbing, that were really, they were maxed out, and I think that was driving a lot of costs up. What we've been seeing, and kind of represented by the Horace Manor project, that I'm not saying prices are going down, but I think they kind of stabilized a little bit, you know, and that helps whether it's a renovation or in a new construction, but they've stabilized a bit, and I think part of that has to do with, to me, the subcontractors seem a little less busy, and therefore they're a little more hungry. I mean, I honestly feel like we're getting numbers on some projects that it's like, we'll do it for this cost. They can submit that to their general contractor, and we'll do it for this, and, you know, if you'll accept that number, we'll figure out a way to do it, you know. So they were very high numbers.
See, my concern, because I've been through this, you know, as a lender, is a price comes in, we as a lender would make a loan, then all of a sudden, that the loan we make is not enough to complete the project, so we have to go back to the web. Or they have to come back to us, and we're almost on the hook because the thing's 3/4 of the way done to finish it. I want to make sure that and this is, I asked Mr. Blankenship the same thing, the price that we get at the time that we sign is the price that's going to be what we pay. I don't want to see, and regardless of which option we're talking about, us think we're gonna pay this and end up paying this because of whatever reason. I know you have contingencies in there, I know a lot of that's to control a lot of that, but I do not want to have a price agreed to that is not guaranteed. And again, I asked Mr. Blankenship, are you willing to guarantee that whatever price is on the contract when we ink that thing is going to be the price at the end of unless we proactively ask you for more? Can you guarantee that whatever the price ends up being, I'm not talking about this price, but whatever the price comes up being, that's going to be the price on the contract is what we pay when the project is in?
Yeah, you know, and, sorry, I hope I doesn't sound like I'm not gonna avoid answering your question, but the way it's important to control those things on the front end. So, you know, the good thing about new construction is you take a lot of guesswork out of it, right? The things that it all gets opened up and you can see it. So that's a good thing. Usually in new construction, where you get hit the hardest are the unforeseens there, which is the stuff underground, right? You know, it's running into rock. It's, you know, unforeseen conditions. You know, once you get beyond that point and the pad is prepared, then, you know, it should come together. Yeah, there's always going to be stuff. I mean, right, we're not going to stand there and say we're perfect, you know, because we're not. There's going to be glitches, there's going to be some coordination issues, you know, and what you always hope for is those are very minor things, and typically they are very minor things. But once you come out of the ground and have a pad prepared, then those issues become much less significant, right? Because then it's just construction, it's new construction as opposed to, you know, all the things underground that you can't see.
So is that a yes or a no?
Well, what I would do to help make that a yes is I think we need to do more. You know, we have 9 borings right now, but I think within that footprint, and these aren't big costs. You know, you go out, geotech will go out there for $3,500, $4,000, and you know, for 10 or 12 borings. Do that. Make sure that, you know, we get borings to refusal. You know, that bullet point that I read a minute ago, being concerned about, you know, where it said something about some of the undercut, making sure we know where that is so that we know we get that put in the base bid. Otherwise, it gets to be a unit cost, and then it can just, you know, almost seem unlimited, right? So I think we need to do our due diligence, just us, but just all of us as a team, you know, to make sure that we control those issues. And then I would say yes, then as long as we do all those things and make sure we're controlling the cost, and that cost can be a guarantee.
Again, a question that I asked Mr. Blankenship. Do you, in your contracts, guarantee date of completion? And if that completion does not take place, do you, are you penalized for not performing completing it on that date? Or, I mean, weather permitting, obviously, if we have a flood like that in North Carolina was getting.
Sure.
Yeah.
And again, that just, and I'll answer it much the way Mr. Blankenship did, because he's 100% spot on with that. You know, that's a construction issue as opposed to a design issue. I mean, as long as we meet our obligation to get the documents out, we employ the same methods of liquidating damages. You know, typically that'll be $1,000 a day. It can be anywhere we want to set it. You know, and basically that provides some motivation, you know, for the general contractor to finish on time. That adds up. Yeah, it's the date, you know.
It's in the contract.
That's right.
No, yeah, exactly, that's what I was asking.
Yes.
Okay, I'm good with me. Anybody else have any questions?
I just share a thought on what you were talking about being involved. The number 317, and there was another one, right? And there's this one, 290. Okay. Why is there a discrepancy? More than likely, the two numbers you mentioned are over 2 years old, 2.5 years ago. So things change, like you said, you know, inflation or the government changes, you know, that changes.
Oh, don't I know?
Yeah, I would say
But
that
I
too.
will share this with you. You try to get a guaranteed number, and I understand, I tried the same thing. Bill and I have gone through a lot over since 2010, I came on. You don't get a guaranteed maximum price until everything goes out for bid.
I understood.
You know, okay, now the number is larger than what we got from the county commission. You may cut it. It's the only way you can make it.
Oh, understood, yeah, I
Okay.
understand.
You can't tie these guys down. It is,
No, I'm talking once the contract is signed.
well, then they'll have a guaranteed maximum.
Well, that's what I was asking.
They'll have, with the subcontractors, there'll be contracts already and everything, and they'll come to us with a guaranteed maximum price. But it could be larger than the amount of money we borrowed. It's a crazy situation, you know, you borrow the money beforehand, hoping this square peg will fit in a round hole. So there you go again. And it's frustrating.
Yeah. But 12 years of
Yeah,
money, I
and
see
you
a
have
lot
to
of
cut out,
yeah.
you have to cut out something that was in the design, and maybe a classroom or a sidewalk here, or where the roofing, where the car pick up, you know, those little things like that. And you come back and put them in later, say, hey, we've done that, every bit over time. But anyway, it's just a little frustrating, but it's a good question.
You know, maybe to help you jump in here, you know, to help sort of address that issue and kind of what you're saying is, you know, look no further than Piedmont. I mean, I think Piedmont turned out to be a very successful renovation project. We did, really finished Dr. Arnold. I was hoping because I think he was the one that came up with those numbers. We had things, you know, we had unforeseen things. It was the existing building, it had some age on it, right? And I'm talking about Piedmont, we're talking about costs and guaranteed costs, and, you know, but I think I remember you telling me sometime back, and I don't know if I can remember the exact number, but, you know, we had things we added, you know, as we went in the project, so that was, like you were saying, you know, proactively added in the project. There were things that were unforeseen, you know, things that, you know, weren't where the as-built drawing said they would be, or something, you know, so the connections, you know, but I think
So we had $500,000 contingency on that project, and we spent somewhere around $96,000 was the actual amount of change orders, where, you know, we dug in the ground and we found an electrical line that we thought was 3 feet deep, and it was 6 inches deep.
Yeah.
And then in the front of the school, there was some sort of septic tank, some sort of concrete tank that had to be removed and soils added. There was some asbestos that was not figured into the price, and we found it, and it was an additional cost. We had some millwork, some cabinetry that was, as we got in there, there was some water damage, some rotten interior and backboard that we needed to replace. Then, as we found something that was an addition to cost, we looked for ways to save money. I think there was a receptionist desk that was priced at $27,000 to put brand new, and we ended up going in and refinishing it, and it was a $7,000 cost to refinish it instead of purchase new. So there were some things that happened and occurred. So that's a very good amount of money that we then returned to the district, and then that money was put on the Talbot Elementary project to move that project forward in that cost saving.
And I think that by factor of percentage, I think I remember you saying, it's probably almost figured in my head, but it was like less than 1%.
That's correct.
Of kind of cost. So, and I'm very sympathetic to what you're saying. I get it. You know, you don't like that moving target, right? And just sometimes there's unforeseen things that you can't really deal with. And you did bring up a good point too. We were always very actively along with us, and Ms. Madden did a great job, and Skanska was involved in that, but always looking for ways. If we found something, we were looking for a way. We do something to offset that cost, you know, so we try to keep that budget, you know. kind
Well,
of-
I know, and my question is, would never hold you to something like this, but my thing is, once the ink is on the line, on the contract, and the price is there, that's what we're gonna end up paying. And I understand that's what contingencies are for, you know, that's why they're in there, to you know, to take care of unknowns, right? Okay, yeah, I know.
Yeah.
Well, we understand. Ms. Mayor, you had a question?
I do have one quick question. I did notice, I forgot to ask you this, on the top of the pricing here, it says they have 3% inflation per year, 2025. I mean, what you gave us in September is the same thing, and that's fine. Are we now, that we're at 2025, is that 3% I need to add on to, because this was 2024, you actually gave us the original.
I was
Are we adding 3% to that now?
I was already thinking 2020, so 292 is where I would keep it.
Okay, and so then when we hit 2026, it's gonna add 3%, and 2027, the total of that's gonna end up adding another 3%.
Depends on what we bid. If we bid it, this year,
And then you're
we
gonna
hold it
free-
there.
yeah, you freeze.
Doesn't increase anymore after that.
There helps a little bit.
There goes to that number.
I just wanna make sure.
Yeah, no, I get it. It could be-
I'm gonna be straight honest now, okay? I think Doug's concern is the same concern that I have. I've seen on many projects, not even around here, not with you guys, not with Blankenship and others. I've seen many multi-million-dollar projects, $15 million, and you're cutting a check for 21, 22 million. $150 million, you're cutting a check for almost $200 million. You know, I see this all the time in new construction, all the time. For me, that's the biggest variable about new construction. You can say all day long, and I know what you want, you want that downtown price, this is it. And I get that there's variables, contingencies, but very rarely have I ever seen a new building go up. In this case, I would probably add 5 to 7 million. Is what I think that when we're done, that we're probably looking at no less than 5 more million being added to this total cost. I guess. I would hope not, but even at 3 million, I've seen jobs around us done where it costs them more than 2 times what it was really supposed to do. so when I see stuff like that on new construction going up, I stay really perked up on prices, and it's starting to easily inflate. And I have the same concerns that Mr. Richardson has as far as prices go up.
I would say that one way we could avoid, or try to help avoid that is, you know, we would be, again, if we want to move forward with the new school, we would begin at design development right now. And so at the end of design development, then we would do a cost estimate at that point to see where we're at along the way. Again, to make sure that we're holding our budget where it needs to be. And you're right, I mean, between DDs and CDs, at that point, a lot of the major decisions are made. You're talking about, you know, what kind of mechanical systems you're using, you know, roofing systems, all that kind of stuff. So you can get a pretty good price, but you never know what's gonna happen time-wise, not because of drawing, between DDs and CDs. You know, if it's 2 months, it could be a world disaster. It could be a drought, I don't know, it could be whatever, right? Something that happens,
somebody felt
the
like-
cost of wood
Yeah,
goes
I know,
up,
I get it.
or metal, or whatever, or something happens. But at the end of DDs would be a really good checkpoint to say, let's see where we're at right here, because we should be in this range right here. And if we're trending some direction that we don't want to trend, then we go back and we make some adjustments. That's with the help of the contractor on board. It doesn't have to be our owner's rep. It can be somebody in the community that has done these things. We do this a lot in design development, you know, kind of just a checkpoint along the way.
Ms. Mayor, did you have something?
Yeah, I was just kind of curious with the, because we don't know what's in the soil. If you did run into a bunch of rock in that soil, so what would that, you know, what would something like that increase the cost to? Hypothetically, ballpark.
Depends on how much, I mean, it literally is a unit cost for cubic yard of whatever you're extracting, so however much, I mean,
A unit cost per,
per cubic yard of material.
what
So,
kind of cost is that? Like how much is that typically run?
so, I mean, depends on what you're, I mean, if it's rippable rock, if it has to be blasted, I mean, there's a whole range of, and that's what we would handle in the unit cost. That's kind of why I'm saying, you know, to address, his issue was doing all the due diligence we can on the front end with the geotechnical, maybe do it a little above and beyond the geotechnical for, you know, just, you know, $3,000 or $4,000 and get that documented really well so that we have a really good idea of the profile of the cross section of that site, so that we take a lot of risk with that.
What's worst case scenario?
It's hard to tell because if you have, do we have rock across the entire site? Do we have rock right here? Do we have, you know, so it's.
Well, the worst case scenario would be rock across the entire site.
Yeah, right, I guess.
9 holes have been punched.
Nine holes.
Right.
And it falls within
Yeah.
limits of its average amounts that would be covered.
That's why you would do it on the front end, do these borings on the front end, do some more borings on the front end, so that hopefully if there's some there, we get it. And then we can give you, an idea of what that might cost at
So
that point.
hit it, what would it cost for that unit cost for that?
Let me to try to give an example, again, I'll reference that job up in Union County. There's an excessive amount of rock. There's no way we'll have that amount of rock on this job. And I think we've been somewhere between, I'd have to go back and double check that, but somewhere probably between, $500,000 and $600,000 just in rock. But again, there's a ton of rock, you know, and extracting that. So that may be the kind of thing, and we're pretty much out of it. I mean, the grading and.
That's a tier. It's a tier.
Yeah, right. It goes up, it's on a hillside, there's,
That's a very unique, I mean,
yeah.
I get that it's like a sliding scale, you know, like it would be really minor versus really bad. So what is that sliding scale?
I'd say the
unit out,
That was
total cost across that job is $500,000.
Right, so that came down to what, per square yard, you said it was based on square yard?
I don't know if I can do the math, that is not keeping my head. So,
Okay.
It's a contract.
Yes, ma'am. Any other questions? Any other questions? Hearing none, thank you. Thank you very much. Dr. Arnold, do you have a comment?
I know that, Mr. Blankenship and I talked about, Talbot, and they're in, design development headed towards, when did we expect, construction documents on Talbot Elementary?
Construction documents should be complete, let's see, starting basically January 1, should be complete, in March, early March. And, nice, owner review period there on the other bus, I'd like to get with, you and Austin,
Mr. Blankenship, can you use the mic?
Oh.
We're recording it, so we need to hear you say.
And I'd like to get together with you and Austin here in the next couple of weeks, review it, and then we'll take, review session, goes out to bid in, March, and, be bid during, April, something, I haven't selected, nobody, we haven't talked about a bid opening, but we should be quite good running, in May, early May.
Anything else
Any,
on?
any questions on Talbot?
It's all scheduled.
On that?
What did we get on the road around the Dolphin School? We got anything together?
We've not, we've discussed that, that's definitely,
An option, still an option.
it's an option, we've looked at that, yeah. Yeah, we'll dig into that.
Question? Thank you. Okay, school commissioners, items for discussion. Anybody have anything? I have one, based upon our policy meeting today. A number of our policies were, on the agenda, changes that we're making. The school, the policy committee, asked, or agreed to have me asked to suspend the rules, waive second reading, and pass the agenda changes, allowing the public comment at the work sessions, et cetera, on the first reading. So I will be introducing that. I'm just letting you know